Good evening and welcome. Tonight I'm going to give an informative speech on the career path of being a police officer. My name is Ryan Vasconi. I'll introduce myself a little bit in a few minutes and tell you a little bit about myself. But first things first, I want to cover the important things. During the speech, I know that most people don't get up, but if you need to use the restroom, the stairwell to your left here, you just proceed to the top of the steps and the restrooms are at the top. If the speech goes on long and you need to obtain some refreshments, right to your left through the doorway here is the kitchen. There's many refreshments, soda, water, and snacks. Okay? All right. The police officer, which is the very basic version of law enforcement, the very basic level, began in the United States in probably the early days, the colonial days, somewhere a little bit after we started to see the name sheriff come about. Now we all know today we see police cars riding down the street. We all vote for a sheriff. Most states, sheriff is an elected official. Back then they were elected, and in some cases they were even appointed. Sheriff, again, back then was to enforce the laws, obtain taxes, and go after civil law violators. And today it's still the same. The sheriff's offices today still provide those same services, on top of some more services that weren't provided back then, like jails and stuff like that. In 1845, the New York City Police Department created the first metropolitan law enforcement police department within the United States. It was created on a very small level. Obviously today, the New York City Police Department is over 30,000 police officers. Back then, they were nowhere close. But that is the first recorded municipal law enforcement agency in the country. And it originally was designed around the London Metropolitan Police Department, which is probably one of the largest law enforcement agencies in the world. In 2008, the Bureau of Justice Statistics from the United States did a study, and as of 2008, there was approximately 593,000 police officers at the local and state level. This does not count the amount of federal law enforcement officers there are, but these are just local, state law enforcement level, state troopers and police officers that you see every day. Simple little quote made by John Wilson goes along with police officers is simply that laws were made to be broken. The basis of a police officer is to enforce the laws that we have in our society today. A little bit about myself. I've been a police officer for 13 years. I started in 1999 in an urban environment as a part-time police officer. I worked in several agencies at the same time. You worked pretty much almost just short of full-time hours and did the same work as a full-time police officer. I then moved to a rural setting, continuing to work part-time, and then now I work in a small town, more urban-style environment, and I currently hold the rank of Master Police Officer. And I've done many different things in my career, from handling homicides all the way down to removing a cow from the road or hurting an animal that has entered the highway. I've done everything in between. Policing today is something that's very interesting. The public sees the police riding around in their car, and I've heard a lot of people over the years say, well, all the police do is write tickets. Because a lot of times all you see is the police has a car pulled over as you're going to the store. Well, yes, the police do enforce traffic regulations, and that is a big part of the job for a patrol officer, the very basic level of law enforcement. But they also handle calls for service. If you dial 911 and ask for the police, you may get that same police officer that you've seen 2 hours before who had a car pulled over and was writing a person a traffic citation. The very basics of police work is essentially detect, apprehend, and prevent crime. And I apologize for the mistake on my PowerPoint here. The difference is, though, in the past and today, police work 30, 40 years ago, when cars were brought into law enforcement, the community law enforcement connection was lost. The officers were in the cars and they weren't able to communicate with the community. But now, community policing has come back around, and they're starting to use the community to assist in the crime prevention, detection, and apprehension part of police work. And before I close here, actually in closing, essentially, a police officer furthers God's work by it's simply stated in Matthew 5:9, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God." A law enforcement officer has always been recognized as a peacemaker. Romans 13:2 states that therefore those who resist authority resist the ordinance of God. A police officer is looked at as authority, and in many ways people do resist police officers and government officials in the furtherance of their duties. And in Romans 13:1, "For there is no authority except from God, and the authorities that exist are appointed by God." Although maybe a police officer is appointed by an elected official, we are still appointed officials, and our essential task is to protect the community, to protect the moral values of society, and to enforce the laws to ensure a safe environment for all of those who live. Any questions? Comments, answers? And if you'll notice, there's always who, what, where, when, why, and how. Most important questions of law enforcement. No questions? Well, I thank you all for your time. I appreciate it. And you all have a wonderful evening.